Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kitajima. I'm here with David Takeyama, and we have our host, actually, Ted Ralston, calling in from the East Coast via Skype. So, Ted, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, and Ian and David, thank you so much for coming on the show. The first episode of Where the Road Leads for 2016, back in the saddle here. We're here in the East Coast in the Arctic Circle studio of ThinkTech Hawaii, well north of the Arctic Circle, right south of the North Pole here, where the elves and those guys are taking their break now, in Concord, New Hampshire. Margie and I are here on a business trip dealing with training for unmanned air vehicles. And as we start the year this year, innovation is going to be our theme for the year. And there's nobody better to talk about innovation than the two of you. So Ian and David, thanks again for starting the year with us and helping us move this whole idea of innovation forward.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Ted. Great to be with you again.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know, one of the things I was going to mention to you earlier, as we were talking just before we began, was I was just watching CES, bits and pieces of it, and I was fascinated with Intel. Intel was demonstrating a new type of 3D camera that they're actually introducing. It was part of actually a Dell tablet, and it reminded me of like the innovations that are happening with image processing systems and even camera systems. And all of a sudden we have this 3D image capability and how that's going to maybe impact UAVs and image processing and object detection. So I'll kind of throw it to you and say, you know, where is this stuff? Where do you know, how do we incorporate these kinds of new technologies in the work that we're doing?
Absolutely. And you know what, I also want to make an advertise and a shout out to downtown Honolulu. It's like the technology capital of Hawaii. There's so much novel and innovative and incredibly creative technology being developed right there on 4th Street Mall in some cases, Bishop Street in other cases, but there's a lot of technology pouring out of downtown Honolulu, and that's cool. What we need to do is find out how to attach that to the themes that are taking place elsewhere. And you mentioned the CES is a great place to make that connection. You mentioned UAVs. I just so happen to have one. My little traveling partner is always with me. This is one of an instant eye that we've used in many times on this show and throughout Hawaii and throughout other parts of the world. And the question you ask is, how do we take the technology and in terms of just that one area, image extraction or feature extraction from video and stills, and incorporate that in the flight navigation and guidance system in these UAVs? And if the world doesn't know it, they will shortly, that Oceanit is certainly a leader in that area of feature extraction from high-rate video, which is really interesting. And we're, I think, changing the way pixels are looked at. In the average pixel set, we call that a picture. Our brains take the pixels and convert them into a picture that we are familiar with. Computers can take those pixels, rip them apart, put them together, filter them, extract features, and then do change detection and change and trend analysis and such. It's incredible. So as you guys go forward and as a leader in that area, what do you see about, in my mind can't even extrapolate that far forward in terms of how many different ways the pixel set, the point cloud of pixels can be manipulated to extract information from it, useful to guide this little guy here by onboard processing, to guide, to generate information that we use as in the expressive layer to communicate what's going on to our superiors. How do you see that all? How do you make that happen? How do you see that picture and then jump on it?
Well, I think I was just in a meeting earlier today. Actually, I think the future, a lot of the future things that we're seeing and the things that we're working on is really the combination of not just single sensors, but multiple sensors actually data fusing together and working together to better do, be it that it's facial detection or facial recognition or object detection. It's like it's hard for a single sensor, I think, to outperform maybe a suite of low-cost sensors, and that's one of the interesting things that has changed over the last, even just in the last 2 or 3 years, where the power of what's even in your cell phone and the cameras that are in your phone and these kind of 3D cameras that Intel is coming out with, these low-cost sensors that in combination that maybe years ago would just be thousands of dollars are now together, a bundled sensor could be a few $100s, but have incredible ability. And then when married with software systems like of the VIPA systems that we're developing for image processing, in combination, those things can do some really amazing things, we believe. But the question really comes always back to what are the problems or what are the needs that that really we can use these technologies to solve. And so I know that we've always kind of interacted around disaster assessments, disaster response, and so that's kind of definitely one particular area where I think when we talked earlier when we were talking about Tropical Storm Isel, one thing that came out of it very quickly was they had images of all the albizia trees. But somebody had to physically look at the map and say, okay, these are all the albizia trees, whereas you could run this through a computer system and have it do image detection and kind of say, okay, here's pinpointing where all the trees are, or where are the I don't know, be it that's telephone poles or down telephone poles or fire hydrants, using software and systems like what are being developed here in Hawaii to actually do a lot of this image recognition.
That's cool. The albizia tree certainly is an issue. And I was just thinking as you're saying that, we have onboard processing, we got maybe additional computer power at home. They're connected by, guess what, IT. And we happen to have somebody sitting at the table here who we're going to hold accountable for making all that IT-based connection occur. So David, we're talking about massive data streams here, I think, and high rates. What are you going to do about that to help us?
I think there's a lot of cool things that can be done with image processing and intelligence. For example, artificial intelligence could be used to help process and make sense out of that information. And one idea, like Ian talked about the albizia trees. One concept may be to use artificial intelligence to help not only determine what is possibly a risk, but also how to better manage resources and manage emergency resources, how to deploy resources more efficiently, et cetera.
So yeah, so I mean, David's, there's actually some related projects. So one of the projects that we're doing around artificial intelligence is virtual assistants, but virtual assistants that are more human-like. And these systems are not designed to replace humans, but they're there to augment the human, because in the case of a military officer or a command center, you're having all of this information. There's so much information coming in that you're kind of overwhelmed, and some critical piece of information may get past you. And so these systems can look almost very much human-like and actually be looking at all this information and then providing kind of an assessment of what's going on to the human to make decisions around those things. So be it that, here's a piece of information, there's a critical thing around power lines, live power lines that are still kind of active, it's creating a potential hazard, and making sure that that information kind of bubbles up and actually gets in front of the commanders or the people in the command center to actually get folks out there and actually do something about it. So the next evolution that we see actually 10 years ago when we got into nanotechnology, which has transformed a lot of the work we're doing, I think the next big wave is around artificial intelligence, strong artificial intelligence. And so that's a really big area that's growing within Oceanit itself. And that can be applied, I think, to a lot of what we're talking about today.
To me, that's really interesting. That there's an implied distribution of computing resources here. There's some on board, there's maybe some intermediate stations, some in a home station. And once again, we load up David as the guy who's going to be responsible for getting all that information communicated. I mean, we can do the processing, but we have to communicate the information, keep it in sync, and have enough bandwidth to handle multiples of these going on. So what's taking place in the IT world, David, that would allow these highly bandwidth related systems to function.
I think, Ian and I were involved with Azelle. I mean, so the traditional way how it's done now is, we went out in the field, took damage assessments manually. And well, before that, it was pen and paper. So you would have to come back to the office. Next generation is we do it on mobile devices, send it back. Next, what's better than that is to, use a UAV or UAS to collect the information. But then you still have to, come back and view it and analyze it. So what we're talking about, maybe the next generation after that, is some automated types of analysis. And to get that information back, there's going to be infrastructure challenges as far as how you get enough bandwidth to be able to send that information back real time if it's needed real time.
So Ted, Ted, one of the things that, as I was watching CES, I saw an interview, and of course CES is very consumer oriented, and everything's around the Internet of, the Internet of Things, right? So that's kind of the big hype right now, is the Internet of Things. So everything in your home will be, from your toothbrush to your washing machine to your coffee maker, everything is Wi-Fi enabled. And so actually the person that was getting interviewed, I thought was very interesting. The one thing that she communicated I thought was interesting was that the need for broadband. She said, like today, the reliable high-speed broadband, that's like a must. And so she started talking about how that is such a big issue, and that's how important it is as we kind of move into this next evolution around the connected home, the connected car, autonomous vehicles, and so on. So, that becomes an interesting thing. The thing I wanted to ask you was what is kind of, I was curious around what is the next evolution around disaster management and the use of UAVs. I mean, that has become 2016 will be, I think, even more so around UAVs and their use and how they're getting commercialized and coming into the mainstream. Where is that all going?
Let's absolutely talk about that. The very reason we're here north of the Arctic Circle is for a FEMA training program that we were instructors on in the use of UAS in disaster operations. We had probably 40 or 50 disaster operations people from Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Washington, D.C., and such in the audience. And we are attempting to do the best we can to extract out of them what their real needs are so that we can get a robust solution set going rather than have the UAV manufacturers tell them what they're going to give them. We have to really turn this thing around and get the user needs to be defined. But the very issues you're both talking about, and that is the I like that term, the virtual advisor, and the semi-autonomous computerized intelligence and such, is exactly what folks are asking for. They asked for something very much like what VIPA can do, that is identify the swimmer in the sea, as opposed to look at the whole sea picture. And so there's connections we've made here, but it's exciting because the users don't quite grasp where the future is going, and therefore they're not able to form their questions or their requirements as succinctly as we might want as engineers. We have to help that go forward by push the technology out in front of them, let them operate it, and see what comes back. In fact, if either one of the two of you or both are interested, 10:30 on coming Tuesday, we've got a demonstration of that exact type with first responder types out in Waipahu, and I'll send you some information offline on that. But it would be great to get somebody from your viewpoint present to interact with those actual users. But we just, my mind is still full of a whole day of that, and no question that the computerized intelligence will be a factor. And we're not supposed to monologue on this program, but guess what I'm doing? There's another piece that I wanted to bring to your attention. We've got a program going, promoting it with the FAA, and it uses drones, UAVs, whatever you want to call them, in the observation of the power grid. Power grid being the transmission lines, the poles, the structures, the guy wires that you know about, all the as-built, as well as the substations and such. And this has got the support of ComEdison in the Midwest, and it's got some insurance companies involved and others. The idea being use the power grid as a well-structured geometric framework to take the very things you're speaking of feature extraction-based guidance, navigation, and control, into the UAV domain. So we could use that established geometric path as the first stage in beyond line of sight flight guidance.
Hey, Ted,
So-
we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take a 1-minute break and then come right
Hey,
back.
Ian.
Yep.
I got to tell you something, man. You've been on this show enough. You are the host from now on. You got it.
No,
Like-
I see the clock, that's why. You can't see the clock. So we're gonna take a break and we're gonna be right back.
Okay, this is Think Tech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
Come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5
Aloha.
p.m. Wednesday. Aloha.
Aloha.
Welcome back to Where the Road Leads. I'm with David Takeyama, our IT director from Oceanit, and joining us via Skype is Ted Ralston, our host for Where the Road Leads, calling in from the East Coast with Skype. So we're just talking about UAVs and kind of the future, where UAVs are going, and we're talking about an event that's happening actually. We're gonna probably get together next week, Tuesday. So Ted, so can you tell us a little bit more? I mean, what is, again, I know you said it's a little hard for the folks to articulate. So how do we figure out some of these needs that people have? Is it like you said, like throwing some technologies out there and seeing, how they respond? I mean, there's so much stuff going on in UAVs. I mean, I look at Kickstarter and some of these other things. It's just pretty wild what's going on today.
Well, that's exactly the challenge, and I must say that I don't have the answer to that other than what you're just suggesting. Exercises, one after the other, interact and understand what they have to do their job and how that job can be enhanced by what we can do with the automatic intelligence and with the UAS operations, enhancing and supplementing and supporting what they're doing to let them get better information, make decisions faster with higher quality in the information. Those are the figures of merit that would be something that they would recognize. That sounds kind of esoteric, right? We've got to convert that into actual things, because when we're talking about this, we're also talking about doing it with 25 knot trade winds, talking about doing it in a salt air laden environment, talking about doing it in rain, and talking about doing it with turbulence and other atmospheric factors. So there's the reality is this is a field operation, and so our technical solutions have to be very robust and tolerant of those challenges. There's a second part that we haven't really thought our way through, but you mentioned the bandwidth issues, and you mentioned the communications issues and the command and control channels. All these systems today are running in the 1.2, 2.4, 5.8 gigahertz range. And that is not a durable range, because everything else runs there too. Every unlicensed device runs in there. You can't have a lot of activity going on because you simply can't get the connection. So Band C is coming into the picture. RTCA is going to be doing some analysis and reports this year, and there will be a special bandwidth and frequency wavelength for UAS operations. What that's going to do is generate the need for software-defined radios or some other way to adopt that new waveform without knowing what it is. So some kind of programmable SDRs will be needed to fulfill the communication challenge here. And it's going to have to be encrypted or in some other way secured so that the malicious factors can't have their way of getting in there and taking over. So the command and control, the communications will be in its own domain in a secure way that is yet not quite clear. In adjacent to that, somewhat in the IT domain, all the onboard software, flight management and control, the inertial measurement unit, whatever is in here, the software is going to have to meet criteria for flight critical software. And so there's means of programming hard software that cannot fail. So we got to have technical standard orders on how software is written. We're going to have a change from the public frequencies to perhaps band C. A lot of change coming next year and soon next year in the world of UAVs. So on top of the need to develop the autonomous onboard operations and the virtual assistant that you're speaking of, comes these other technical changes at the same time. So it's going to be a confusing year in the world of drones, and there's probably going to be more manufacturers than we've seen before. So can you put yourself in the shoes of the customer trying to sort this all out? That's going to be a tall order to fill to give customers a straightforward and accurate expression of what's going on.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to kind of get David in the conversation, and I would actually ask David, but I don't know if David knows about some of these. We're actually doing some work, quite a bit of work around communications, and so even around software-defined radios and things. So maybe ask David, what are we kind of doing, or what are we seeing around communications, long-range kind of communications, bandwidth, line of sight. We do a lot of work around lasers, so I don't know if David want to.
And David, down to the 1 ounce category. We're talking one.
I was going to ask you about batteries after too, Ted. I wanted to get your thoughts later, just right after on batteries too. Yeah, that's a big limitation, I think, right?
I think there's just so much going on when you see like a new technology. Everybody knows that all of these new things are happening, a lot of new applications, but in a way, people don't exactly know all the use cases of what it could be used for. And to me, that's when it's an exciting time when there's a new technology like this, because you can just see it, that new things are going to come out. But at the same time, when you have like a new technology, there's going to be a lot of growing pains and issues and people trying to figure out how to do things. And I think, like Ian said, I think one of the big important things will be, because they're going to be like new sensors, new communications methods and devices. The important thing, I think, is going to be the systems integration and how people figure out to pull everything together so that everything fits together and it makes sense. For example, we could be collecting data for damage assessments, but then how is that data going to be transferred to the person in the field? How is that going to be converted to a logistical system? How is that going to be, how is that information going to be then transmitted to somebody for, that's helping out with aid? How is it going to be transferred to people for insurance companies, for example? So all of that systems integration is required, I think.
Yeah. I mean, how do you protect data too? I mean, imagine cybersecurity and some of these things are going to become, no one seems to be hacking into systems like that are useful for helping save lives, but I'm curious.
Yeah, that is a big concern. There's a lot of, hi Ted. Yeah.
There's a really important side to what you're talking about. That has to do with that, with the security of that information, so it can't be misused, and so it can't be diverted or not available when it's counted on. And there's a very important undertone or overtone of that, and that's the issue of privacy and personal rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution. How do we protect them when we have this kind of extraction going on? It starts with people concerned about drones, even in regard to emergency operations, getting information that shouldn't have. That is there's information about people's private lives, their private habits, whatever it might be, their lifestyles that is personally identifiable information. If it's collected, what do you do with it? How do you get rid of it? Is like part one. The incredibly intriguing part is if you take something like VIPA or other analysis tools that extract information, they can extract information, I'm guessing, that in patterns and such that isn't known today. And so we have a risk of getting into this area of privacy factors, even as we develop the technology. So it's not just collecting the pictures, it's how you use them, how you extract information from them that could enter this world of publicly identifiable or privately identifiable information that must be protected. So there's a big social issue here. There's a big socialization issue. That's what came up today in our coursework quite a bit, that this new technology, whatever it may be, that's of a disruptive nature, has to be socialized into the current system in ways that are unending. And the very issue of systems engineering that you spoke of, Ian, could have a component of socialization, because the systems engineering represents how everything plays together. That could be what is expressed to user groups and such to let them see the whole picture. Modeling and simulation then jump right on top of that to allow you to do a lot of practice of a tabletop exercise type.
Actually, I laugh because I bought my kids a little UAV for Christmas that had a camera in it, like a 1080p camera. And the first thing my wife says is, I don't like drones. I said, how come? I said, because you can like spy on people with it. That was her first reaction.
Yeah. And so actually,
you picture it on the FAA website, David?
But I think you're right, Ted. I think the technology is so advanced. It's so way ahead of where we are. I think for folks. I mean, the human challenge of making people feel comfortable and how do we balance the great power and usefulness of these technologies, as well as kind of protect people's privacies. You know, as we talked before, when we went out to do damage assessments after a disaster, people feel very vulnerable. They actually, even though you may be credentialed and you are with officials, people to actually do these assessments, people are very wary, even of just folks coming out from the outside, coming into their properties or looking at what's going on in terms of damages. Because, we're there to assess the damage so that we can help the recovery efforts speed up. And we're real people. So I'd imagine if a UAV was flying around my home because I could imagine, with the technology in the future, we could deploy UAVs that really just fly around homes, take the imagery, do some automated assessments based on FEMA requirements, FEMA's criteria. And literally these things are buzzing around people's homes, capturing this information and documenting the damages and giving us the first line of kind of initial assessments. Now humans can go in after, but just that alone would be like, people would probably just be freaking out. They'd probably come up with their shotguns and shoot these things down. So, so there's this human element that continues to be, I think, an underappreciated, underrepresented piece of the adoption that happens with technologies. And so more and more, like, I agree, we need to spend more time there. And even at Oceanit, we're trying to spend more time there, trying to understand the human part of it, not just throw technology out there and
That's pretty good for a technology company to take that step and think about that in that direction. And I think we're talking about the same problem. None of us know what to do about it. Certainly modeling and simulation would be a way. Just imagine a video game that's based on search and rescue or something like that, or the Albizia tree recovery video game. When the kids start getting into this stuff and start understanding what it does to their lives and how it can help them, I think we'll see the next generation coming up with an appreciation that will sort of self-resolve some of these issues that we, as, of course, I'm a lot more senior than you guys are, but
so Ted, hold that thought. We're gonna jump over to a break, take a break, and we'll be right back where the road leads with our host Ted Ralston. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. I'm IC Davidson. Thanks for tuning in to Think Tech Hawaii. One of the things that we do here, or the thing that we do here, is promote civic engagement in Hawaii. What does that mean? We want to talk about things that people want to hear about, and we want you to engage us and be part of that conversation. One of the ways that you can do that is by joining in during our live show via Twitter. How do you do that? Well, you get on the interwebs and get Twitter, get an account, and mention us if you have a question. What you'll do is you tune into our show live, tweet us questions, and our hosts and guests will address them accordingly. It's really easy, it's really fun, and I think that your participation in what we're doing here will help us continue the dialogue on very important issues that we're trying to cover. Sustainability, clean energy, you name it, we're on top of it. We want you to be part of what we're doing, because together we'll be able to make things change. Thank you for watching Think Tech Hawaii, thinktechhawaii.com, weekdays 12 to 5 p.m. That was weird.
Welcome back to Where the Road Leads. I'm with David Takeyama, IT Director for Oceanit. I'm Ian Kitajima from Oceanit. And joining us via Skype is our host, Ted Ralston, all the way on the East Coast, trying to stay warm. So Ted, we're talking about, I think part of the next part of what we're talking about is kind of the next generation of folks coming out of the university, and how do we engage them and get them excited. And I think my response to you would, part of it would be, how do we find meaningful challenges? So like you mentioned, finding people who are lost at sea or have kind of gone into Waikiki Beach and got too far out and they need some help, and we're deploying a drone, a UAV to go out there and actually automate and actually try and find these folks. That's a very difficult problem. From my understanding, that's not a trivial one. But those kinds of challenges would be probably the things I would throw out to these kind of young, hotshots coming in university and say, here's a really important problem, a meaningful problem that is very difficult to solve, and have them kind of tackle this with whatever technology and tools that are at their disposal, and get them engaged in that process. And they'll probably come up with totally different things than you and I would probably come up with.
And they'll be socialized already, so when they become entering the workforce and the life force, they will accept these things. In fact, they'll find the next challenge that we can't even quite see. Let me take advantage of the last 10 minutes we have here before our first show of 2016 concludes, and tell you the kind of problem that we've been discussing at the FAA and with some other technology people in the world of virtual reality. I don't know much about virtual reality. I can say the word, but it is somewhere between cognition, in technology and dynamic information, and how the brain works and how information is presented and how expression is created. And it's something that is really intriguing in the sense that back on this subject again, the drones, the drone racers are really doing virtual reality. They are living in a two-dimensional world of depiction, but they're thinking three-dimensionally. And there's a fourth dimension if you think of time in there. So cognition and extraction of information from what you're being fed is a really interesting concept. So I was wanting to suggest that we need to inject what you guys are doing at Oceanit into the drone racing world. And as much as I'm sure Oceanit doesn't produce drone racers, it would be like going to Alice Chalmers and saying, how about joining the Indy 500? I mean, that's that's where this stuff is actually developed, even though it is racing. But the reason I bring that up is that we've got a competition coming next year, October 2016. All the world's drone racers will be gathered in Hawaii. And there will be a life-saving challenge tossed in the middle of the drone racing activity. There will be the whistle blows and the word is given, hey, shut everything down. We got 30 minutes. We can report on somebody at sea here in the ocean, and you guys have 30 minutes, 2 teams, to put together whatever you can, and let's go out there and help the lifeguards work that problem. So we'll see some really interesting, creative people come together on that. But in that discussion, one possible approach has been suggested already. That is, instead of taking something like this, that I have to put the batteries in and check it out and make sure the comms works and get the GPS going and let it go through all that, then I have to look at the scope when it's operating. We got to get past that. And the work you're talking about, automatic extraction, it works beautifully. The idea is when the lifeguard goes to work, he takes a case with him that happens to have some drones in it and some equipment. And he doesn't know anything about what's inside of it. He just puts it down by the lifeguard stand. Thing's got a GPS antenna. It knows where it is. If it knows where it is, it knows what the beach area looks like. It can has a historical track of where things normally go wrong out there, where lifeguards have had to take action. So when there's an issue, the guy just presses a button, it pops up, goes out and starts tracking in the areas where historically there have been rescues at sea in that area. Using VIPA, it pulls up where the suspected or where a potential suspected issue is, flies and hovers right over that, and even communicates down to the lifeguard who's now swimming out there. He's not dealing with a UAV, he's doing what his real job is. He's got a Tom Brady tablet on his wrist, and the picture shows exactly what the drone is seeing. And he can decide to accept that information as a virtual assistant or he reject it and take other actions. But that's what we're thinking about, getting the guy out of the picture, as much automatic operation and decision-making as can be, yet in a 1 pound package. So that's why I asked you, David, before, this
awesome.
software-defined radio, looking at 1 ounce, man.
Well, you definitely have all the toys at Oceanit, and we're doing lots of work in software-defined radios. And we've actually put together proposals for the city around kind of creating a virtual lifeguard. So just exactly kind of what you're saying is we have a system that's actually kind of always looking out onto the ocean, and again, it's kind of augmenting the physical lifeguard, because there's so many things going on in his view, but the camera system is looking, and maybe somebody goes beyond a certain point, there's a kind of a virtual fence out there. Somebody goes beyond that, then he gets an alert potentially that says, hey, look to the right. There's somebody going beyond the 50-yard marker. And so now this guy starts paying attention. Okay, there's a guy out there. He's out there. He looks okay. And then now he's 100 yards out. Okay, he gets another alert. Like, is this guy still okay, right? And like you said, at some point, maybe the drone automatically deploys, right? It flies out there to really check in, like get really close to this guy, because he looks like he's snorkeling, but is he really snorkeling, or is he in trouble, right? And now the lifeguard kind of gets a better assessment, but at the same time, he's always on guard, but you have technology augmenting this person who's out there, who's
Absolutely
sitting
right.
there, right?
You don't want to make that lifeguard stick his head in the scope and try to look at the scope all the time. He's got to be out there swimming and doing his rescue work. So this then brings up another question. Exactly where do we turn to cause that theme of innovation to come emerging out of people's minds? You remember when we were kids and used to read the Donald Duck cartoons? Gyro Gearloose was Donald Duck's uncle, who was an inventor. He used to whack himself on the head with a croquet mallet to get a bright idea. I don't think we want to do that. But bright ideas, what if we had a bright idea camp downtown Honolulu, February 1st this year? Got a bright idea? Come on down 4th Street Mall. And with a poster talking about your bright idea.
I mean, we do something like that. I mean, David can talk about our innovation summit at Oceanit, where we all get together.
Yeah, internally, we have an innovation summit where anybody in the company can submit an idea. And we've had, people in admin submit great ideas, and everyone in the company. But it's a safe way for us to just generate any ideas and some of those eventually get funded. We have an internal innovation fund as well that can fund ideas. So those are all great ideas, I think.
Yeah, a couple. I think actually two out of our 3 startups actually came out of the innovation fund that we have at the company. So
you're kind of crowdsourcing innovation within your own company.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we do have customers that come to us with very specific issues and problems and ask us to solve these things. But then internally as well, we open it up to everyone in the organization to And it's really, the innovation comes from the collaboration that occurs among people. So your thoughts about how to get students, universities, and people actually kind of collaborating and working together is actually very important for, I think, the innovation and creativity. The one piece that it's always very difficult is, in my opinion, because I'm on the commercialization business side for Oceanit, is who is this a big enough problem that somebody is willing to put money into to solve?
Right. How do you turn this into
Yeah.
a sustainable business?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. I mean, I don't know if you have ideas, Ted. I mean, we both work for our big customer is the federal government, but how do we get city, county, state people, private industry, and others to kind of go, hey, solving some of these problems, actually, there is a business case. And so that's partly maybe where the guys like me come in, where we're trying to figure out, okay, is there a business case that we can make so somebody will put up the monies to actually do it and bring the innovation to market, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. You could take some case studies and maybe there's something that can extrude out of them. For example, take Amazon for that matter. Whoever would have imagined that something like Amazon could ever work? It's such a complicated framework, yet you get stuff in the mail 2 days later. I mean, it really works. Or even eBay. Who would have thought that people would trust to give their credit card information into a bill-paying system, eBay? These things are things that affect everybody. They're the common denominator that affects all of our life areas. And I think that what you guys are talking about, the virtual assistants, if that's the proper term for what you're thinking of, I think that's going to show up in everything. When you come home from work, the coffee maker will start, the microwave will get ready to do your hamburger. I mean, all that sort of thing will be virtual assisted. And so that capability has to be attached to human values and life values in some way through the product interface. I can say that. I have no idea how to actually take the next step and make that happen. Over to you.
Well, we're coming right down to the end of it, Ted. So, but yeah, no, I think the UAV, technologies and all of that that's going on in, especially in Hawaii, we didn't really get to touch on. I wanted to talk a little bit, have you talk a little bit about what's going on in Alaska and innovation, because Hawaii is part of the Alaska consortium of UAVs, and they're, as you mentioned, they're kind of going gangbusters in that, they're transforming what they're doing in Alaska via UAVs. And Hawaii has, I think, similarly, that unique opportunity. There is a very large community growing in Hawaii around enthusiasts around drones and UAVs and the potential they have to do very good things. I think part of it is that education, as you mentioned, and the social aspect of it, and communicating and getting people to see the value of these kinds of technologies, and that in the right hands, it's really about the people and where do you put these, in whose hands do you put these technologies, and how do they help solve societal issues. But I know we're kind of coming to the end right now, so I just kind of want to throw it back to you and thank you again for having us on the show, and let you kind of close us out, should I say, but maybe share a little bit about what's going on.
I totally appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come sit on the show, and we'll be back in Hawaii on Oahu on Monday, and then Tuesday, as I mentioned, I think we'll have a continuation of the discussion on Tuesday, and we'll, I believe, be able to do some actual interaction with the first responders and take that discussion we just had the next step there. So I'll communicate with you guys over the weekend, and we'll see you then. And once again, thanks very much for opening the 2016, the third year of Where the Road Leads, with that incredible creativity and innovation and engineering that you guys have right down on 4th Street, in that crucible of creativity called downtown Honolulu.
Thank you so much, Ted.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.
we'll get you guys on again sometime soon, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. We got to get together and spend more time implementing innovation and getting it out there. And we appreciate all of your efforts here to spread and share what's going on in Hawaii with the broader community.
Okay, we'll talk about Alaska and Hawaii when we meet on Tuesday.
Great. Thanks, man.